In this episode of the podcast, I'll be diving into two of the most infamous and controversial dictators in history, Genghis Khan and Adolf Hitler. Both are known as ruthless rulers who left a profound impact on world history. But the question is, which one was the more brutal dictator, the more bloodthirsty, the more merciless executioner? How did their actions differ, and how did their legacies alter the course of history? Family upbringing played a crucial role in shaping Genghis Khan's character. His family came from a blacksmithing tribe, and from a young age, he learned that resilience and hard work were key to achieving his goals. His father, Yesuke Bahadur, was the leader of the Borjigin clan, constantly engaged in battles with enemies. This environment exposed Genghis to a harsh, warlike world from early childhood. On the other hand, his mother, Holan, was a strong woman who, after her husband's death, managed to hold the family together and showed Genghis that fear should never hold him back. These familial influences helped mold him into a confident and powerful leader. Hitler, on the other hand, was born into a relatively strict family. His father, Alois Hitler, was a stern and serious customs official who strongly believed in discipline and order in raising his children. In contrast, his mother, Clara, was kind and caring, sharing a close bond with Hitler. Growing up, Hitler often found himself caught between his father's harshness and his mother's affection. This contrast may have contributed to his complex personality. After the death of both his parents, Hitler experienced deep loneliness and struggled with financial and emotional issues. Both Genghis Khan and Hitler faced significant challenges in their childhoods. Genghis grew up in a violent, unstable environment where survival meant constant fighting, especially after his father's murder left the family in poverty and danger. These conditions taught him from a young age how to combat tribal enemies and navigate a world of conflict. In contrast, Hitler's upbringing was different. He was raised under the strict discipline of a government employee father and later faced personal and academic failures in his youth. The early death of his parents only intensified his feelings of frustration and anger towards society. Ultimately, both leaders were deeply affected by the hardships of their childhood, but their environments and the reasons behind their struggles were entirely different. Genghis Khan faced tribal conflicts from a young age. After his father was killed by enemies, his family's position weakened significantly to the point where they were forced to leave their tribe. Yet, despite these hardships, he refused to give up. Temujin, Genghis Khan's birth name, relied on his skills and the alliances he built with other tribes and friends to begin his journey toward power. One of the major turning points in his life was the Anda Pact he made with his childhood friend Jomukha. Although they later became rivals, these early alliances played a crucial role in Genghis Khan's rise to power. Hitler's path to power was also full of challenges and ups and downs. Early on, he struggled in school and was later rejected by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. These failures deepened his sense of frustration with life, and over time, his focus shifted toward politics. After World War I, in which he served as a soldier, Germany faced severe political and economic crises. This is where Hitler saw an opportunity. He took advantage of the people's dissatisfaction and the chaos that plagued the country, eventually rising to power through the Nazi Party, which he helped establish. With fiery speeches and a charismatic persona, he convinced the masses that he was the one to save Germany from its crisis. Genghis Khan and Hitler took completely different paths to power. Genghis Khan rose through military dominance and tribal alliances, using his strategic brilliance and leadership to unite the Mongol tribes and ultimately become their supreme ruler. In contrast, Hitler seized power through political maneuvering and propaganda. Following Germany's defeat in World War I, he exploited the country's instability and used his powerful speeches to make the Nazi Party the leading force in the nation. Genghis Khan relied on warfare and tribal unity, while Hitler leaned on politics and racist propaganda to achieve their respective power. Genghis Khan believed in creating order and unity among the Mongol tribes and even across other lands. His main goal was to establish a vast empire that would bring everyone under his control, thus preventing chaos and internal tribal conflicts. One of his core principles was that those who remained loyal to him would enjoy security and prosperity, but his enemies would be destroyed. For Genghis, success in warfare and dominance over the world was the ultimate goal, and he constantly worked toward this with both military power and smart diplomacy. Hitler's ideology, on the other hand, was rooted in racism, extreme nationalism, and the belief in Aryan superiority. His primary objective was to build a vast empire known as the Third Reich, where Germans and Aryan people would reign as the superior race. Hitler believed that Jews, Roma people, and other ethnic minorities had to be eliminated to allow the Aryan race to thrive. He also sought to conquer other lands, especially in Eastern Europe, to create Lebensraum or living space for Germans. There were significant differences between the ideologies of these two authoritarian leaders. Genghis Khan was more focused on expanding his territory and creating a massive empire through the unification of tribes and conquering new lands. Racial or ethnic concepts were not central to his mission. Hitler, however, based his entire regime on the ideology of racial superiority, aiming to build a global empire ruled by the so-called superior race, while viewing minorities, particularly Jews, as enemies. While both leaders pursued domination and control, Genghis Khan's motivations were centered around unity and military conquest, whereas Hitler's were driven by racism and racial supremacy. Genghis Khan combined military and political strategies in his rule. On one hand, the Mongol army, under his direct command, was highly organized and powerful. The Mongols used specific tactics like swift attacks and psychological warfare, often catching their enemies off guard. On the other hand, Genghis would promote loyal and capable individuals to important positions, and even relied on people who surrendered to him to help govern the conquered lands. He introduced a legal code known as the Yasa, which established order and discipline across his empire, and everyone was expected to follow these laws without question. Adolf Hitler, in his rule, combined extensive propaganda, suppression of political opponents, and a strong military structure. The Nazis, through media control and powerful propaganda, shaped public opinion and presented Hitler as a heroic figure. At the same time, Hitler used the secret police, Gestapo, and the Nazi security system to arrest or eliminate anyone who opposed him. His army became one of the strongest in the world, and Hitler used this military power to conquer other nations and expand his influence. Genghis Khan primarily succeeded through military strength and creating fear. When he conquered a city, he often applied extreme violence, which spread terror far and wide. However, once he had control, he aimed to establish order and stability, even utilizing local talent for governance. Hitler, on the other hand, maintained his power by limiting political opposition, relying heavily on widespread propaganda and using secret security forces. Instead of seeking order, he used fear and threats to control the people. The main difference between these two dictators is that Genghis Khan sought stability and order after conquest, while Hitler relied on fear and suppression, even during times of peace. For Genghis, stability followed violence, but for Hitler, fear and repression were constant tools of control. Genghis Khan became one of the most prominent leaders in history through his conquests, with the Mongols expanding their empire from Asia to Europe. During Genghis Khan's campaigns, it's estimated that between 40 to 60 million people were killed, accounting for about 10 to 15% of the world's population at the time. Under his leadership, the Mongol Empire became one of the largest land empires in human history. In addition to his conquests, Genghis Khan facilitated international trade, turning the Silk Road into a major commercial route under his control. Although his campaigns were marked by brutality, Their impact on history, cultural exchange, and global trade was undeniable. On the other hand, Adolf Hitler initiated one of the most devastating events in history, World War II. The war Hitler unleashed caused the deaths of millions, leaving lasting effects on the world for decades after its end. Beyond the war itself, the Holocaust, one of the largest atrocities in history, was carried out under his regime. Hitler's actions fundamentally reshaped global politics and society, cementing his place as one of the most infamous dictators in history. Both Genghis Khan and Hitler left indelible marks on the world, though their legacies are shaped by different forms of conquest, one through empire building and the other through war and genocide. While Genghis is remembered for his brutal military campaigns and vast empire, Hitler's legacy is defined by the war he initiated and the horrific crimes of the Holocaust. Genghis Khan's achievements include the creation of the Mongol Empire, the facilitation of international trade, and the establishment of new laws. However, alongside these accomplishments, he left a trail of destruction. The Mongols attacked numerous cities and countless innocent people were slaughtered. Cities that resisted were often razed to the ground, with their inhabitants either massacred or enslaved. The brutal Mongol invasions altered the history of many regions across Asia and Europe forever. Hitler's early achievements were primarily in the military and economic spheres. In the early years of his rule, he managed to improve Germany's economy and significantly reduce unemployment. He built the German military into one of the strongest forces in the world. But these achievements quickly turned into devastation. Hitler's aggressive and racist policies led to the start of World War II, resulting in the destruction of cities and countries. Ultimately, his actions caused the deaths of millions and brought Germany to utter defeat and ruin. While both leaders achieved significant power, their legacies are marked not only by their initial successes, but also by the immense destruction and suffering they left in their wake. Historically, Genghis Khan is viewed as a dualistic figure. On one hand, he was a great leader who united the scattered Mongol tribes and the vast steppes of Mongolia, forming one of the largest empires in history. On the other hand, he is often remembered for the widespread violence and massacres he carried out, earning a reputation as a ruthless and brutal leader. Philosophically, one could argue that Genghis Khan saw power as a tool for establishing order. He believed that by conquering more lands, he could create a unified and powerful world. Hitler, too, was a complex and contradictory figure. On one hand, he was a strong leader who united the German people and improved their economy. Yet, on the other hand, his racist policies and horrific crimes made him one of the most notorious figures in history. Philosophically, Hitler represents the madness of unchecked power and racial fanaticism. The Nazi ideology, rooted in racial and national superiority, led to unimaginable destruction, showing that power without morality and humanity can result in catastrophe. Both leaders played major roles in atrocities and violence. Genghis Khan used fear and brutality as his main tools in warfare, devastating countless cities in his conquests. However, his violence was more military-focused and aimed at territorial expansion. Hitler, driven by racial superiority, systematically and deliberately murdered millions, with his crimes being rooted in an unprecedented level of racial hatred. While both left deep scars on history, their methods and motivations, though equally brutal, stemmed from different philosophies and ideologies.